So we have a little bit of breaking news on the issue of Donald Trump's tax returns. So now this news comes from the Washington Post, and it states that a federal appeals court has ruled that Trump must turn over his tax returns to New York prosecutors. However, that remains to be seen, as I'm going to get to later in the story. Uh, so now it's reported that Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. has been pursuing the returns as part of an investigation into the Trump Organization and its role into buying the silence of two women who claimed to have had affairs with Donald Trump. So now the Trump Organization thing that's very very important. So just keep that in mind that it's not Donald Trump himself, but the organization. So now those two women, of course, Stormy Daniels or Stephanie Clifford and Karen McDougal, they made these claims, and so this relates to the National Enquirer and payments as well. Now, back in August of 2016, AMI, that's American Media, which owns the National Enquirer, had acquired the rights to Miss McDougal's story about Mr. Trump, and basically what they did is that they bought that story for about $150,000. Also, they promised to use its magazines to promote her career as a fitness specialist. That's Karen McDougal. She's an ex Playboy model, right? So they made that deal with her. So now recently she just got out of that deal and now is able to speak freely about it. So now the National Enquirer, they bought the story and then they didn't run it. They basically engaged in a practice called catch and kill. They would buy the rights to the story and then they would bury it. Okay, all right. So now Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, like I said, her story actually never got bought by AMI or the National Enquirer, even though there were talks about it. Instead, you had Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former personal lawyer and now current resident of prison, um, basically paying her off with his own money right before the 2016 election. Now, Cohen said at first that he was not directed by President Trump. Instead, he was just giving of his own money. And then Donald Trump happened to reimburse him later. Right, of course. Now, the problem with that is that, look, this would be illegal, is potentially illegal, because it could count as a campaign contribution. If it happened right before the election, which it did, um, that would mean that they were, again, sort of looking forward and trying to prevent this story from coming out that could affect his electoral chances. So when you look at it from that framing, from that perspective, it would appear to be a campaign contribution. And so here's the government of New York, specifically New York prosecutors, saying, well, we got to make sure that this is not a campaign contribution, or see if it is a campaign contribution, because again, that would run afoul of federal law. Okay, so now, very complicated situation, right? Uh, so again, that's why they're looking for the tax returns to see if what role the organization had in it as well. And so they're basically following the money. So now Trump's defense is, and get this, that the president cannot be held liable of any crime while he's president. He has unlimited immunity. He is above the law, according to the Justice Department. So don't even try. Just don't even try. Okay. So now that went to appeals, right? So that's what they were appealing, because there was already a decision to have him hand over at least 8 years of tax returns to Trump Organization and Trump himself. So the argument against that from the appeals is that, again, Trump is above the law. So you can't get his tax returns. Well, the judge, the three-panel judge, I'm sorry, the three-judge panel said that was ridiculous. In fact, back in October, a federal judge dismissed that as extraordinary. And let's see, this is a quote from Victor Marrero. He said he could not endorse such a categorical and limitless assertion of presidential immunity. So now we go to this panel, right, that just made this decision, and they actually had a different reasoning than Judge Marrero. The appeals court said that the president's accounting firm, not Mr. Trump himself, was subpoenaed for the documents, so it did not matter whether presidents have immunity or not. so they can get the tax records from the accounting firm. Well, I mean, we're looking at the accounting, we're looking at the business, and so we're not looking at President Trump uh, specifically, even though it's his tax returns and the business we are looking to get. Now that's interesting. So let me go to the statement here from the court. They said, we emphasize again the narrowness of the issue before us. This appeal does not require us to consider whether the president is immune from indictment and prosecution while in office, nor to consider whether the president may lawfully be ordered to produce documents for use in a state criminal proceeding. So what they're doing, and this is interesting, is they're actually trying to sidestep that defense. They declined to take a position on whether the president himself has immunity, but instead going after the businesses. Now, is this going to be effective? I can't necessarily say. I can't say for sure, right? Donald Trump, of course, he's already going to fight it, and there's already plans to take this to the Supreme Court. So now, I don't know. Look, I'm going to speculate here and say that he's doing this because he thinks, well, I got Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. I have Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. So we have a conservative majority. So maybe they will rule in my favor so that I don't have to present these tax returns. But Jay Sekulow, his lawyer, Trump's lawyer, says other than the Supreme Court, we're pretty much running out of options to try to delay and to stop these returns from being revealed, from being handed over. And it kind of makes you wonder what's on the returns. Now, there's two different schools of thought, right? For one, they basically show Donald Trump's alleged criminality, right? And that's, I think, is an assumption a lot of people make, and we don't know for sure. The other one, and I kind of subscribe to this a little bit more, but I think I'm more of a mix, is that it shows that President Donald Trump is not as rich as he claims. Remember, this guy built his entire image, his entire brand on being super, super wealthy. We've seen from other tax leaks that he's not exactly as wealthy or as good of a businessman as he claims. And so if it comes out that he's not nearly as wealthy, even if he didn't do anything criminal, by the way, which I think is very unlikely, but even if it did come out, to give people the benefit of the doubt, the MAGA guys, Trump supporters, so he didn't do anything wrong. Why does he still not want it out? Because he's not rich. Because he's a terrible businessman, which undercut his entire reason for being in office. I don't know. That seems like it to me. Like I said, a mix of both of those. But again, speculation, because I haven't looked at those tax returns. Neither is really anybody else. So we'll have to see if this goes to the court and what the court will decide. But I know it's going to probably take a long time to make its way through the court if they even decide to take it up in the first place. But then again, if they don't, then this lower court ruling would probably stand. And if that's the case, well, there's nowhere else to go. New York's going to get these tax returns. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.